Absolutely nobody likes boring beats. So if you're worried that your beats are a bit robotic, a bit static and repetitive, I've got just the thing for you. It's a polyrhythmic groovebox that can crank out ever-changing and evolving beats to keep things exciting and your listeners glued. Beats that are guaranteed to inject life into your drums and reinvigorate your tracks. And here it is. It's called Biffage, and it's a sample-based groovebox that makes polyrhythms a piece of cake. Let's get straight into it and see what this plugin does. This is the plan for today's video. First up, we're going to have a showcase and a listen to some of the wonky beats that I've already made with Biffage, just to give you an idea of what it can do. Then we'll take a deeper look at the GUI and just get to grips with how you can work with this masterpiece of broken beats. A bit of good news for you, as Biffage works with samples, you can actually load your own, which means that whatever kind of percussive sounds or any kind of sounds you want to work with, just load them straight into Biffage and off you go. If you don't know how to do that, watch this video and everything will become crystal clear. Let's get into it. So we're going to be using Biffage together with Native Instruments TRK01 kick drum synth, basically because it's a great sounding kick drum, very easy to use, and we're using it to provide a kick beat as a steady backdrop to the polyrhythms that Biffage is going to generate. For the first beat, I've loaded Biffage up with some dry 909 samples, and for the second beat, I've loaded up some dry 808 samples, basically so that we've got some familiar sounds to work with. All that remains to be done right now is to click that play button so you can hear what it sounds like. Now we've got a couple of demos under our belt and you've got an idea of what Biffage sounds like. Hopefully it's giving you a taste of what you can do to create totally unhinged beats that somehow manage to contain multiple component grooves, each with their own time signatures, but with everything remaining coherent. Or you can just use it to create a bit of unpredictability and instability over something more conventional like a standard 4/4 beat. So now that we've done that, let's take a closer look at the GUI and just get to grips with how it works. Essentially, Biffage is 4 samplers layered together, each with its own Euclidean sequencer, which we can see here, and these are triggered independently, and they go out into the mixer where you set the levels, and then you've got the master effects. So that's the flow and a very basic idea of what's going on. Let's work through each of these sections so that we can just understand what's doing what. This is the master effect section. You've got a ladder filter, a metaverb and a tape delay. That's a nice driver, tube and lo-fi effect. If we just move to the left here, we've got the mixer section, which is a pretty basic mixer. And you've got 4 sliders, one for each sampler, and it's color coded. So this corresponds to the red sampler, green to green, blue to blue, and so on. Underneath that, there's some pretty standard controls in the form of solo and mute, as you would expect on a mixer. And then you've got the balance. Then we've got the gain here, multi-out, and master decay per sampler. We'll come to the shift random in a little while. That doesn't have too much to do with the mixer. It's more to do with creating unpredictable beats. but we will cover that. And then below that we have the sample windows, each of which is again color coded. So this shows you the sample being triggered in sampler 1, sampler 2, and so on. And some very rudimentary controls underneath that in the form of which sample that you're using per sampler. You have up to 127 that you can use in any given slot in Reaktor. Then you've got your start, which determines at which point the sample will start playing. You've got the smooth effects and the decay level, and that's it pretty much for the sample windows. And that brings us to the sequencer section, which kind of sets Biffage apart from other samplers and grooveboxes. We have 4 different samplers, and each one is triggered by a Euclidean sequencer here. If you want to know what Euclidean sequencers are, you're welcome to Google that. It gets a bit complex, so I'll just keep it very simple here. And the controls are again color-coded, so the controls for Euclidean sequencer 1 are in red here. For the second one, they are below here, the third one here, and the fourth one here. And as you saw a bit earlier, you see each one flashing as each sample is triggered. So just to keep things simple, I'm going to work only with sampler 1 or sequencer 1. And I've got a pretty easy visualization to work with here so we can see what is going on. So how does it work? It's actually quite simple. You saw it running a bit earlier, and again we're going to be working with TRK01 just to provide a steady backbeat. And you will see this kind of clock hand move around the sequence, and whenever it goes over a step that is colored in, it will trigger that sample. So you'll see it running, and each time it covers one of these, it will trigger the sample that you've selected for this sampler. So let's just see and hear what that sounds like. You can increase and decrease the amount of steps in a sequence, and you can choose how many sections are filled in, so how often the sound will trigger. So the more you have, the more often it's going to trigger. And you can actually shift the pattern clockwise and anti-clockwise. To do that, you need this to be switched off. We'll get to that in a little while. So yeah, you just move that and it moves it around clockwise or anti-clockwise. Then we have the pitch at which the sample will play and the speed at which the sequencer will run. So now that we've changed things up a little bit in terms of what the sequence looks like, let's see what effect that's had on the sound. So there you go, quite some difference. Let's make it play slower, just a little bit. Really increase the amount of steps, reduce the amount of times it triggers, and just play with the shift a little bit there and see what that sounds like. Pretty simple, and it's exactly the same for each of the 4 samplers. So whatever the controls are here, it's exactly the same here, here, and here. So that is the basic functionality of the Euclidean sequencer. I'll just come back to this quickly here. I did mention it a bit earlier in terms of what it can do to randomize things. So basically, when I click the go button here for each of the samplers that has the button switched on here, it will change the shift randomly, just like this. And if you just want to do that to samplers 1 and 4, there you go, as simple as that. A nice, quick and easy way of randomizing things and just creating a little bit more randomization. And that brings us to the ratcheting section down here, and that's one of my favorite parts of this sampler. And what it does is to create an ever evolving pattern. And the easiest way to demonstrate this is just to show exactly what's going on. I'll reduce the amount of steps so that it's easier to see here. So we've just got 4, and it's triggering on every 4th square, and we'll do this something similar for sequence number 2. Let's put 8 on there and we'll have 3 triggers. So what I'm going to do is activate the ratchet function on sequencer 2, and I'm going to select number 1 here. So what now will happen is they will both run, and in sequencer 1, because that's the one we're choosing to trigger the ratchet functionality in sequencer 2, whenever it goes over a step, sequencer 2 will shift forward 1. Now that might not make a lot of sense, but when I press play you'll see exactly what happens, because actions speak louder than words sometimes. Here we go. So just watch what happens in this window here and this window here, and you will see the ratcheting function working quite simply and quite easily. Here we go. So every time we go past this step, it triggers the ratchet function and the steps move forward 1 in sequencer 2. And you can do that with all 4 of these, and that means that you can just create some really crazy beats that are just ever evolving. With the ratcheting function and the shift randomization, it really is a piece of cake to create polyrhythms that are going to keep your beats really interesting and changing and evolving. So in a nutshell, that's the GUI. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you like what you saw, be sure to drop a like and leave a comment. Make sure to subscribe because we've got all kinds of great content in the pipeline for you. And check out the channel. It's absolutely packed with videos that you are going to love. Here's a couple of videos that YouTube is very kindly recommending for you. Why not watch one of them? And I'll see you in the next one.